Shalom and welcome to Secrets Revealed, the Holy Bible. It's been a long time since I've done a video, and now I'm just trying to catch up. So let's start doing that. We're on Exodus chapter 23, and there are 33 verses beginning in verse 1. The whole verse is different. So let's look at this. You shall not receive a vain report. So is the word vain or vanity, does that mean fake? Is that what it means? Perhaps uh, because King Solomon, famously said, vanity of vanities, all is vanity, all is nothing. So it could be a baseless report. That's what it could mean. However, the MT says you shall not raise a false report. So it's not just baseless, it's completely, it's a lie. Whereas here in the Septuagint, it says that it's a vain report. You shall not agree with the unjust man or woman to become an unjust witness. We see here on the MT, put not your hand. So it's not simply agreeing verbally or in your mind mentally, but you're actually doing something. You're putting your hand, uh, doing actions with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. So the last part seems pretty equal, very similar. But as you can see, not only is receiving a vain report a lot different than raising a false report, because when you're on the receiving end of information, you're not the one spreading you're not slandering somebody by receiving a false report. You're entertaining it. You're giving validity to the person delivering the message, as opposed to an MT. You're the one actually blurting it out. You're the one spreading, um, fake news, or you can say literally it's fake news. It's false report. So that's verse 1. You shall not associate with the multitude of for evil. So here it says associate, and the Septuagint here we see you shall not follow. So associate with versus follow. Uh, that's the difference there. And then the whole verse actually is also different. So we'll look at it in more detail. You shall not join yourself with a multitude to turn aside with the majority so as to shut out judgment. So don't join yourself with a mob for the purpose of shutting out judgment. Uh, what does that mean? It could mean you're withholding righteous judgment. You're either delaying a righteous judgment, or you're just not deciding at all. You're not using judgment. It could be you're just not using your judgment, or you're not using good judgment. But either way, you're following a mob, a multitude, into wrong behavior, a wrong attitude, perhaps even. In the MT, it says here, neither shall you speak any cause. So this is speaking. Is very specific in the MT that it's speaking, whereas as the Septuagint says, don't join yourself with a multitude. It could be talking, it could be behavior, it could be anything. You're joining yourself with a group of people who are not doing the right thing. They're not saying the right thing. They're not up to good. They're not good people. Don't follow them. Don't join yourself with them. Don't associate with them. Oh, the multitude and a majority, it's very specific, not just a multitude, but it's a majority. So there's a bit of peer pressure there. Whereas the MT says, neither shall you speak in a cause. So there's a cause to decline after many to rest. Rest means to, let me look that up for a moment. I'm not even sure what that. Okay, so that word rest means to force. So you shall not speak in a cause to decline after many to force. So think of, let's just bring up this group where certain lives, as you say, matter. They're pushing an agenda to force the government to do things that they want them to do. Whether right or wrong, they're forcing them by rioting, by protesting, by various means. But the point is, they want to force their hand. So don't follow a crowd to force. Well, in this case, it's not just any, forcing. It's forcing, and it says here judgment in italics. So that's what it's talking about, uh, in the empty at least. But you can see there's a significant, I would say it's a big difference, where you would join yourself with a group of people that happen to be the majority, specifically the majority. So, for example, let's just say, for example, the WASPs in Canada say they're the majority, and I join with them because they're the majority, only because of that reason, and I shut out judgment. So I'm not using good judgment, and I'm also withholding righteous judgment. On the other hand, the MT says, uh, don't speak in a cause, so it completely eliminates the multitude and the majority, and it's saying you're forcing. So you're forcing some judgment. But that's not what it's saying at all. It's not saying you're forcing, and it's not saying that you're speaking. And it seems to imply that this is somebody who's solo. It's not someone who's joined to a group, where in the Septuagint, it's very clear it is a multitude and it's the majority as well. Um, okay, I don't know what that was about. Verse 3 says, oh, let's look at my notes here. Verse 3 says spare, which means skimp or cheat. You shall not skimp or cheat a poor man in judgment. Verses, you neither shall you countenance or face a poor man in his cause. Okay, that's actually a big difference. It's one thing to skimp or cheat someone who's poor, but it's another thing to face a poor man in his cause. There's nothing wrong with facing somebody, unless you're facing them in opposition, and for to persecute them for the purpose of persecuting them. That's the wrong way to do it, but it's not very specific in the MT. In the Septuagint, it's very specific, saying, "You shall not spare a poor man in judgment. Don't skimp or cheat a poor man in his judgment. Don't take advantage of the poor." Essentially, is what it's saying. Don't persecute them. On the other hand, in verse 3, it's saying, "Don't face them." Why can't? What's wrong with facing them? There is nothing wrong to face somebody. I just want to point that out. Okay, verse 4, it's talking about restore. Restore is omitted, completely omitted. Restore them to him. So this is talking about domesticated animals. Not only do you bring it back, you restore it to them, meaning they're supposed to be alive and in good health. Verse 5, you shall not pass by it, versus forbear to help. So to hold oneself back from helping. I think they're expressing similar thoughts, but it's worded differently. So one is saying you're just passing by it, you're ignoring it, versus holding yourself back from helping. But I have to admit, if you're passing by something, uh, it's even saying, there's no excuse for you to even pass by it. And that should lead you to help, because it does express that, this is what you do. You shall help to raise it with him, is the next part of the verse. Verse 7 says unjust. Let me just scroll down a bit. Unjust versus false. So every unjust thing, okay. You shall abstain from every unjust thing versus keep you far from a false matter. So you can see, actually, that is a significant difference. You shall abstain from every unjust thing. Okay, so something that's not just, not according to the Torah, you will abstain from it, versus keep you far from a false matter. Okay, so a situation where there's a falsity, a lie being spread, keep far from it. Whereas it's talking about something that's really unjust, not false. So falsity would fall under the umbrella of unjust things. So it's a much bigger umbrella when it's saying unjust, and that's what it's talking about. For gifts, right at the end, you shall not justify the wicked for gifts or bribes, is probably a better way to explain it. Do not justify the wicked in the Masoretic, but no, it's actually justify the wicked. Why? Because they bribed you. Don't accept bribes, and don't let your judgment be affected or influenced. Bribery is bad. Let's just put it that way, simply. Verse 8, seeing, blind the eyes of the seeing versus wise, the eyes of the wise, or blind the wise. So gifts blind the eyes of the seeing. That can mean many things. It could just mean anyone who could see, or anyone who's in a position to judge, versus blinds the wise. So yeah, you know what? They're somewhat similar. I would say there's a small difference, but I wouldn't say it's a large difference, but a very subtle difference there. Just words, corrupt just words versus the words of the righteous. So you have someone using just words, righteous words, versus the words of the righteous. So this is more focusing on the words themselves than who those words are coming from. Verse 11. We see here it's talking about the Shemitah, or the sabbatical year. This is something that is very much neglected by a large majority of humanity. We're not practicing this. And you know what? There is a consequence for not doing this. We're going to look at that later on. Verse 13, the whole first half of the verse is different. So let's look at that. Verse 13, observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. Okay. MT says, in all things that I've said to you, be circumspect. Okay, so these are things that he didn't just say them to me, he commanded them. And he's not saying just, circumspect means to be, cautious, but it's not just saying be cautious, it's saying observe them. So do them. And you shall make no mention of the name of other Elohim. Okay, so that is the same there. So that's the rest of it is pretty equal. For gifts, oh no, we're on what verse is it? 8:13. Observe versus be circumspect. Okay. So that's the difference there. And we'll move on. Verse 16, the feast of completion versus ingathering. So the feast of ingathering, I believe that is, I believe this feast, it says the feast of the harvest of first fruits of your labors, and the feast of completion at the end of the year. This is the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. So that's That's what the Feast of Completion is. On the other hand, the Masoretic text says the Feast of Ingathering. I believe that is, it could be Sukkot. I don't quite remember, but I'm going to think that's what it is because it says it is in the end of the year. So it's expressed differently. Verse 7, oh, sorry, 17. Oh, I'm sorry. Rewind. It's not 7 or 17. 7 usually symbolizes completion. So Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, is the 7th feast. Okay, maybe that's why it's called completion. Verse 18, the first half of this verse is omitted. So let's read it. It's not even included at all. It's deleted, essentially. For when I shall have cast out the nations from before you, and shall have widened your borders. So that part has been removed. The part of casting out the nations before you and widening their borders, I don't know why that was omitted. Heck, I would I would have left that in. Why not? Because kicking other people out, you know what? You don't want to have to do that yourself. So it's better if God does it. And widening my borders, who doesn't want more land, right? Verse 20, my angel versus an angel. It's not just an angel. This is my angel. Okay. Verse 21, he will not give way to you versus he will not pardon your transgressions. Wow. This is a major difference. This means, what does this mean? He will not conform to your ways and will not follow you astray, meaning he will not compromise. Who's this talking about? The angel or the messenger. He will not compromise, but you can see there, he will not pardon your transgressions. Oh, that is very, I can see why some people think that the God of the Old Testament is a cruel, sadistic God, because this person is saying, my angel will not pardon your transgressions. I don't think a lot of people focus on this verse, but if you really did, and you made a religion based on this, that he will not forgive your sins, that's just an attitude of unforgiveness and holding things against people. That's not what it says, though. I mean, that's why we're pointing these out, because it's so vitally important. Let's look at verse 22. The first 80% of the verse is different, so let's read it. If you will indeed hear my voice versus obey his voice. So it's saying my voice. This is the Creator speaking. It's not talking about the angel's voice. If you will do all the things I shall charge you with, versus and do all that I speak. It's not all he speaks. It's the things he's commanding. More specifically, and keep my covenant. So that is omitted. You shall be to me a peculiar people. What does this mean? Peculiar? Because you're special. Why? You are above all nations, all the countries, all the people. You're going to be above them. You're put on a pedestal, essentially. Not that he's saying that he doesn't care about anyone else. He's saying at this time you're above them because I've given you my commandments. I've made this covenant with you. You're supposed to be an example. I'm starting with you first. And then, later on, it was opened up to everyone else after, Jesus Christ died, Yeshua. For the whole earth is mine. Wow, that was left out. The whole earth is mine. I own everything and everything in it. And you shall be to me a priesthood,
Robbie.
a royal priesthood. Let me just pause this because, okay, pardon the interruption. Uh, anyway, let's move on. The whole earth is mine. You shall be to me a royal priesthood. That was omitted as well. And a holy nation. These words shall you speak to the children of Israel, if you shall indeed hear my voice, and do all the things I shall tell you. I will be an enemy to your enemies. So that part is, that's where the differences end. So he's telling them, Israel, the children of Israel, you're going to be a special people to me. The whole earth is mine. You're going to be a royal priesthood, a holy nation, uh, if you will indeed hear my voice. That's, if you do this, then you'll be this. It's not a guarantee. It's not, I'm just going to give it to you for nothing. No, you have to obey. You have to fulfill your part of the bargain. Israel. I'm talking about Israel. Verse 23 says, as your leader, versus before you. So my angel shall go, my messenger shall go as your leader. So that's very different. This angel is going to lead them. It's not just going before them, in front of them. But they're similar in a way. But I think leader is a stronger word. Girgashite is omitted in the MT. Verse 24, destroy versus overthrow. Talking about the idols, the Elohim, the false Elohim. Pillar, pillar. Break in pieces, break to pieces their pillars. So it's not break down their images. Not that you're not supposed to do that, but it's not talking about that in this verse specifically. It's saying to break to pieces their pillars, not their images. That's already implied in the first part of the verse that you will utterly destroy them. Well, what will you destroy? The statues, the paintings, things like that that are depicting these false Elohim. Um, but it's building on not just breaking down these idols, it's also saying break down their pillars, because the pillars are the structures that hold up their temples. You're going to break those down. He's given you permission for specifically this land where you're going, and you destroy the pillars. You destroy their places of worship. That's what it's saying. uh, Verse 25, wine is omitted. Notice that. I'd say that's a somewhat significant difference. Wine is an important symbolic thing. But if you want to create a religion saying alcohol is banned, then yeah, you go with the Masoretic text. Verse 26, impotent, impotent. There shall not be someone that's impotent in your land, versus uh, cast their young. So drive out, kick out, leave desolate. You're throwing out their young, abandoning their kids. Um, makes no sense. There shall nothing, nobody will throw out their kids in your land. So never kick your kids out. But what if they get married? Are you going to kick them out, like, or let them, get their own, house, basically? Are you going to let them live their own life? But no, uh, throwing out your young, abandoning your kids. I think it's talking about young kids anyway. But the point is, impotent or barren. It's talking about fertility. That's what it's talking about. But then in the Masoretic, it's talking about being a bad parent and kicking your kids out and forsaking them, abandoning them, leaving them as orphans to fend for themselves. Uh, Not that that's a bad thing to do, to not do this, but that's just not what it says. Let's just be honest. Verse 27, strike with amazement. versus to destroy. To destroy. Verse 28, the Amorites are omitted. Verse 30, earth, inherit the earth versus inherit the land. Okay.
Did you give me, Robbie? I need to sleep.
So verse 30, I don't think it's talking about the whole planet. I personally don't think it's talking about the whole planet. I think it's talking about land. So in this case, land is better translated in the Masoretic text, I must confess, because earth means the ground, not the literal land. I mean, I should say earth means the ground, the literal land, not the full planet. So Israel as a nation, the kingdom of Israel, they aren't inheriting the whole planet. Uh, or maybe that's a future prophecy. I don't know. But as you can see, uh, they're given this portion of land in that section of the planet. Obviously, well, to me at least, they're not given the whole planet because you have other people living in other continents all across the globe. So how can they inherit the whole planet? You're gonna have to exterminate every single race of people. That doesn't make sense. So I don't believe that's what it's saying. So I think this translation of earth means ground. So until you shall be increased and inherit the ground, um, the literal land. You're going to inherit the land. Okay. Verse 31 says the great river Euphrates. So it's very specific versus just the river. In verse 31. Yeah. So that's a boundary. These are the boundaries of that land. And so as you can see, it isn't the whole earth, because if it was the whole earth, it wouldn't give boundaries. It would just say from the ocean to the other ocean. That's what it would say. It wouldn't say for the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and then from the wilderness, which is the desert, to the great river Euphrates. So maybe it was commonly understood when they referred to the river, they meant the Euphrates. Maybe that's why they didn't include it. But as you know, a lot of people around the world are privy to this scriptures, and so not everybody knows. It's not common knowledge that that's the river it's talking about, because we know of so many rivers now, the Nile River and the Delta, all that, uh, Mississippi. So which river is it? No, it's the Euphrates. So it's very specific in the Septuagint, and for good reason, because as you can see in this day and age, how would anyone know if you're not specific? Verse 33, it's the last verse, and it says offense. These will be an offense to you if you specifically, uh, these people will live in your land and you make a covenant with them. So these are people worshiping other Elohim. Uh, don't let them live in your land. It's talking about Israel. They're going to cause you to sin against me. And if you serve their Elohim, this will be an offense to you. It won't simply be a trap, although, yeah, technically it would be, but it's going to be an offense. It's going to be offensive to you, and it'll actually make you offensive as well when you think about it. So that's all I have to present for this chapter. And we only covered one chapter, so thank you for your time. May Jehovah bless you and make your way prosperous. For Secrets Revealed, the Holy Bible, this is Jack Knight signing off. Shalom. 2, 3.